A father and son who hired an assassin in a hijab to carry out a hit job in Birmingham were jailed for more than 40 years in total. Mohammed Aslam, who's 56, and Mohammed Nazir, who's 30, were behind a plot to kill a man outside his home in Acox Green on September the 7th, 2019. But when the would-be hit woman they hired from America approached the target, her gun jammed and he managed to escape. Prosecutors said the intended target was a man named Aslat, but the male confronted by the shooter was actually his son, Sikander. There was history between the family, with the defendants including an incident in 2018 when Mr. Mahmood's shop in Alamrock Road was trashed and members of both sides were injured. Separate to the murder plot, Nazir tried to frame a former friend he once cultivated cannabis with by having gun components mailed to his address from the US by the same alleged hit woman used in the Birmingham shooting attempt. Aslam and Nazir were both convicted of conspiracy to murder, while Nazir was also found guilty of possession of a firearm with intent to cause fear of violence, perverting the course of justice and fraudulent evasion of a prohibition. Today, at Birmingham Crown Court, Nazir was sentenced to 32 years in prison and Aslam was sentenced to 10 years. Both will serve 2/3 of the terms before they are eligible for release. Aimee Betro, the Hijabi assassin, who's in her 40s from Wisconsin in the United States, is alleged to have been the hired assassin, and an international arrest warrant was executed and she was detained in Armenia early this year. Extradition proceedings are ongoing, it was confirmed. Judge Simon Drew KC stated the attempted shooting was a deliberately planned revenge attack, adding it would have amounted to an execution if it was successful. Summarising the facts of the case, he declared the background to the incident was very important. Police had been called to a serious disorder at a boutique shop on Alamrock Road on Birmingham on July the 21st, 2018. He, along both defendants, sustained significant injuries, with the shop owner suffering from a brain injury that has affected his decision-making and memory, a psychologist has concluded. Later, the same day, the windows were smashed at the defendant's home in Derby. Judge Drew said precisely what your families fell out over remains more than a little unclear to me. It was some considerable mention. It was a dispute over Asian wedding clothes. Absolute madness. He added the exact reason for the feud did not matter, but concluded there was antagonism and resentment between the two families, which was the motive for the subsequent shooting attack in September the following year. Judge Drew told the court it was overstating the case to describe it as a contract killing, but he said the female shooter was rewarded whilst there was also evidence of a loose relationship between her and Nazir. The trial was told Aimee Betro travelled to the UK in August 2019 and stayed at various hotels around the country. A few days after her arrival, she was supposedly involved in a collision with two vehicles, one of which belonged to Aslam. Judge Drew stated it was more likely the incident was some sort of an insurance claim than a genuine accident, but added it was significant because it was proof Betro had met face-to-face with Aslam. The court heard Betro eventually came to stay at the Rotunda in Birmingham, where she met Nazir. Early that day, he and Aslam had driven down from Derby and around the Bordesley Green area in order to carry out reconnaissance in the area of their family rival. Prosecutors stated the next day, Betro drove into Acox Green, where she ultimately pulled a gun on Sikander, only for it to jam and allow him to flee. It was only a matter of chance that Sikander was not killed. It was then alleged Betro returned to the same address a few hours later and fired 3 shots at an upstairs bedroom window, although no one was injured. The trial then heard she flew out the country from Manchester Airport on September the 9th that year, with Nazir following her to America 4 days later, and remained in the country for around a month. And Nazir then returned to the UK on October the 13th when he was arrested. Prosecutor said 3 days after, Betro posted 3 packages containing gun components and ammunition to a former friend of Nazir in a separate plan to set up that pal. It is believed Nazir had once grown cannabis with the associate, only for them to fall out. Andrew Selby Casey, defending Nazir, stated he had strong family ties and his actions were out of character. And the mitigation for Aslam argued he played a limited role in the murder plot and was effective Nazir's driver because he was disqualified at the time. He emphasised that in 2018, a brain injury caused significant cognitive impairment, which impacted his rational judgment and ability to exercise self-control. His defense said he is lightly convicted. He doesn't have a criminal lifestyle, doesn't have criminal associates, doesn't do drugs or alcohol. He has family support. Hannah Sidwi of the Crown Prosecution Service said this was a methodical and well-planned attack against the victim's family, where the offenders tried to cover their tracks by using a third party and burner device to avoid detection. In the plan to discharge a loaded firearm, the intention was clear. It was to kill. This was a complex investigation involving collaboration between West Midlands and Derbyshire Police, the Crown Prosecution Service and the US authorities. It involved obtaining evidential material from the US, including forensic samples, to link the offenders with evidence from the crimes. These convictions and sentencing serve as a reminder of the consequences of using deadly weapons on our streets, and we will continue to work with our criminal justice partners to bring these kind of perpetrators to justice. You have been warned. Absolute madness, guys. So, big sentences there. Hijabi HitWoman hired for a beef that apparently was over some Asian wedding clothes. Absolute madness. So a little bit more into this case. So the prosecutor said the history between the defendants and the target date back to 2018, with a dispute at an Asian wedding store to do with jewelry or clothing which belonged to the victim, and the front windows were broken and the inside was trashed. However, when police arrived, Nazir and Aslam were alleged to have been standing in the rear doorway injured. Just 3 days later, their home in Derby was attacked. Obviously, they planned their revenge and got Betro to travel from the US after he pretended to be interested in purchasing the car that Mr. Mahmoud was selling. The prosecutor stated Sikandar arrived in an Audi outside of a different residence on September the 7th. As he was doing it, the potential killer emerged from the Mercedes driver's side, said it was a woman. As she left the Mercedes, she left the driver's door open. She walked calmly towards Sikandar Ali and was pointing a gun at him at head height. As she got close to Sikandar, he saw her and he saw the gun, and she pulled the trigger to fire the gun at him. Mercifully and luckily for him, the gun jammed and he quickly reversed his car, striking the open door of a Mercedes. The would-be assassin then ran back to the Mercedes and started to drive away. As she did so, she tried to close the driver's door but could not do so. Prosecutor said later she got a taxi to the target's home, and he said she left the taxi but asked the driver to wait, and she went on foot to the street. She stood more or less where the man who she tried to shoot had pulled his car in the previous evening, and she produced a gun. It might have been the same gun that she had earlier. Prosecutor said it might have been another. She took out the gun and took aim and then fired a few shots in the direction of the house, and in the process the bullets entered through the first floor window. The sounds of the shots caused the dogs to bark. The jury then heard how Betro took a taxi back to the McDonald's in Bordsley Green and then fled the UK on September the 9th that year from Manchester to New York and then on to Chicago, never to return. It was alleged she called the intended target to inquire about buying a VW Golf from him prior to the assassination attempt. The court heard how, after the incident, Betro said to have texted the target, "Where are you hiding? Stop playing hide and seek. You're lucky it jammed." Prosecutor claims she sent further messages saying, "Who is it, your family or you? And pick one," as she told the target to meet her at an Asda. Betro allegedly texted him after the incident saying, "You want to rip me off? You want to be a drugs kingpin? Go look at your house. I will show you. Watch your back. I'm licking off shots. I will be shedding soon." The jury was told he responded, "What are you talking about? I'm a family man. I've never sold drugs in my life." However, police used all this intel, and the actual victim, he got locked up for 13 years after EncroChat messages revealed he was a cocaine kingpin. So guys, there's a story coming from the West Midlands. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.